Welcome to Creating Connection with me, your host, Dr. T, where we will navigate being human together. We'll do this through conversations, exploring the challenges and joys of life, uncovering insights and strategies to create meaningful connections, to foster personal growth and find solace in the collective wisdom of our diverse community. Drawing from a unique blend of academic expertise and personal experiences, I will dive into the joys and complexities of aging, death, dying, grief, and body image. With a blend of humor and compassion and understanding, we will forge connections that transcend geographical boundaries and unite us in our shared humanity. When we come together, the possibilities are endless. Creating Connection with me, Dr. T, starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. T, and you're listening to Creating Connection on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with me for the next hour as I talk about transitions and using mindfulness to find stillness in the storm. That is what ChatGPT helped me create for a title, Finding Stillness in the Storm, Mindfulness for Life's Transition. And really, that idea of finding stillness in the storm can be really challenging, right? Because storms are like surrounding and noisy and they're upheaval. And so what happens when we drop into the body, drop into the stillness that is inherent in every moment? And at most moments. So caveat, yes, there are emergencies and things where it would be difficult to be in stillness, but for the most part, and for those of you listening, probably can find that and access that. But we, in the midst of storms, can forget to remember our tools, right? Like, so that is a real issue when we forget to remember, as my dear friend Laura says. So today's episode is actually my last one on Transformation Talk Radio. This is episode 28, and it has been quite a journey. I began this in September of 23. I've learned so much, and I hope that those of you listening have learned right along with me. And there is a bittersweetness of this time, which also led to the topic of mindfulness for life's transitions. Because even when things are a choice or a good thing or, a timely thing, it can be really, really hard to find that peace in there. There might be second guessing. There might be like, oh, should I, shouldn't I? And in the midst of that, how can we drop in? How can we know our own stillness, our own kind of rightness? And that's not to say that there's not grief or challenges. So transitions are anything, it's kind of the in-between time, right? Or it might be just at the beginning or just at the end of something. And even if it is a positive thing, so I'm thinking of friends who, when they got married, they talked about like, oh, there's no kind of conversation around the changes of going from, single life to married life. And yes, there's lots of celebration, and yes, it's a positive choice, and there's love, and there's all of these wonderful things. But there's also, could be, a slight grieving, but we don't want to talk about that because then it feels like we're not grateful for the good thing, right? And that's why I want to start talking about bringing in these tools of mindfulness to support, whether it's hard transitions, choice made transitions, good transitions, whatever we want to label them. And again, labeling can be its own challenge, right? So we can say things like, that I just did. This is good. This is bad. This is challenging. And that is also adds to some of the issues in what we are talking about. Because we're labeling them, we're calling them good, we're calling them bad. And instead it's just life. One of the sayings that I rest on is, one of the only things we can count on is change in this life is change. We are constantly changing all of the time. Circumstances are changing. Life, weather, the weather is changing all the time, but we want certainty. We want like that stability. We want to know like what the next thing is going to be. And when we don't, it can be very, very scary. So I'm not discounting that either. And so all of this to say is that transitions are part of life, and change is definitely part of life. Another saying that I love is, "This too shall pass." And I hold that saying or statement close to me because it helps me remember that when things are challenging, this too shall pass. It won't last forever. It can't last forever. And when things are going really well, this too shall pass, or in a precious moment, or in a, great experience, this too shall pass helps me stay present to that this too will also end. And so, how can I stay in this moment, in the present? And in the present moment, there's space for creativity, there's space for other decisions. And it's when we're kind of out in the storm of transition or in the storm of change that we can get caught up. And as I've said several times, but it bears repeating, that often when we are looking to the future, it can be scary. We might say, like, this happened today, and then these are the likely outcomes of that, and I'm scared and I'm terrified. And I don't want to negate that, because we have these amazing brains for a reason. We have this ability to think ahead and make plans, but also to worry and also to have anxiety. And it can be useful up to a point, right? Like, we can say, okay, if this happened today and these are the outcomes, when we are in a place of openness or curiosity, we can say, these are the steps that I'm going to take, and use it, in that productive way. When we find ourselves, kind of like over and over, like thinking about a certain thing, pausing, and as it, I think I've heard Dan Harris say this, one of his teachers would say, he would ask the question, is this useful? And I find that to be a very useful question to interrupt kind of that worry. So if you find yourself today, or whenever you're listening to this, in a period of change, or, something has happened in this moment, and you start worrying, and if it's becomes like prohibitive, you might ask yourself that question, is this useful? And that's not to judge, right? Because we are we are creatures that we want consistency, we want peace, we want safety, we want all of these things. And so when we are feeling shaken about getting them, yeah, it's scary, and it can be hard to find that stillness in the storm. Likewise, we can look at the past and we can say, in the good old days, or this used to happen, and this is the way it used to be, and I want it to be that way again. But we're in the present moment. Our brains are awesome for being able to think and reflect and remember and reminisce. But when we get caught up in rumination, that can lead to depression and challenges that way. So again, asking yourself, is this useful? And allowing and bringing yourself back to the present moment. And I'm a little all over the place, because, this topic gives me such so many of the feelings, and also endings are hard. And I have really enjoyed myself on this episode. But now I'm talking about the end of the episode, and we're not even anywhere close to that. So let me gather back to this moment. And I want to just say how appreciative I am for Transformation Talk Radio and all that they have done to support me as I have created my very first podcast. So, I do want to talk about the common challenges of transitions. So, I've touched a little bit on it: fear of the unknown, fear of instability, emotional upheaval, and resistance to change. And when we have that, we actually can create a lot of our own suffering. And I'm not to say that things that happen in the world, or happen, in your community or in your life, aren't challenges and they aren't difficult. But if it's happening already, when we add kind of like, I wish it wasn't this and I wish it were this way, we kind of add to our own suffering, which can be, a little bit to take in, right? Because there are facts. And my friend Pat does, she helped me learn this years and years ago, the fact game, we call it. And it's like, what can we say that are the facts of this moment? And then what are we saying about those facts, or what are the fears, or what are the worries about those facts? And then can I pause? And then can I take a breath? And then can I, maybe find a course of action in to respond versus having that knee-jerk reaction. I love this idea. Well, it's a quote actually from a book by John Kabat-Zinn, and it says, you can't control the waves, but you can learn to surf. And it was from a cartoon that he had seen years ago. But I like this saying because you can't change the storm, you can't change the waves, but you can change how to navigate it. You can learn how to surf, you can learn how to be with it, you can learn how to do things from your point of reality. And someone today reminded me that there's so much we can't control, but we can control our response. We can control being kind, being curious, being open when things can seem really scary and frightening and out of control. So I do want to, during this episode, I will be leading two different meditations, and I'd like to start with one now that I'll be using this to anchor into this present moment. So pausing, meditation to anchor into the present moment. Finding a position that can feel supportive, where you can be alert yet at ease, lowering the gaze or closing the eyes. Taking a couple of deep breaths, breathing in through the nose, expanding the belly, and exhaling through the mouth. Audible exhale. Let's do that a couple more times. Deep breath in and exhale. One more time, deep breath in, expand the belly, and exhale, allowing yourself to arrive and settle in this moment. You might notice points of contact, the surface that you're on. Maybe you notice air temperature, or the feeling or sensation of the clothing touching your skin. You're not trying to change anything. You're not trying to do anything different. You're just noticing what's here already. Much like in life, there may be things going on, the storm might be raging, and yet we can bring our attention back to the present moment through these anchors of attention, through the breath, through body sensations, through sounds. And joining me to enter into this moment as it is. The mind might be churning, it might be challenged. And what can you do to come back to the present moment again and again without judgment? You might notice, oh, my thoughts are going here, my thoughts are going there. But the invitation is to come back to the present moment, focusing on the breath, breathing in, knowing you're breathing in, breathing out, knowing you're breathing out. What's here in the present moment? Are there fears? Are there worries? Can you make room for them? They're here already. Trying to shove them away might make them a little more pervasive or louder till they get your attention. So, seeing if you can open to the idea of allowing what's here to be here. And if there is a lot of fear or anxiety, hand to heart center, hand on the belly, offering yourself compassion and tenderness for the challenges that you may be facing in this moment. Inviting the nervous system to regulate, inviting this moment of focusing just on the breath. And if you notice judgments or again the mind wandering off, just gently come back to the body breathing. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. Arriving and settling in this moment as it is. And again, if the mind is noisy or there's fear feeling in the body, seeing if you can offer yourself comfort, much like you would a small child or a loved one. You wouldn't yell at that person and say, "Stop feeling that way." No, you might again offer compassionate touch, a hug. You might offer understanding or just your presence. So, this invitation in this moment is to offer yourself your own kind attention, your own gift of friendliness towards whatever is going on in this moment. If you notice tension or holding in the body, on an exhale, seeing if you can release that tension or holding. And on an inhale, maybe inviting peace or ease. Inhale, peace. Exhale, tension. May I meet this moment as a friend. May I meet it as it is. May I meet this moment as it is. May I meet this moment as a friend. Friendliness and awareness for what is. As you feel ready, bringing some movement to the fingers, to the body, maybe wiggling the fingers and stretching if that feels appropriate, opening the eyes if they've been closed. Thank you for bringing your attention to the present moment. Thank you for taking time to calm, if only for a moment, so that that calmness can ripple out to those that are in your circle that you might experience today, that you might come in contact with. And we can't stay in those moments all of the time. Again, moments of transition. We're transitioning maybe from pausing and being with the breath to now listening and talking again about navigating change. And so I do want to highlight the meditation techniques that do support this idea of navigating change or being with transition. So, as we just did in the practice, breath awareness, using the breath to ground and soothe in moments of overwhelm. So, this could be at any point. We're already breathing, we're breathing 24/7. And it is that act of paying attention to the breath on purpose in the present moment or breathing intentionally so that you can tell your body, we're safe in this moment. We're safe in this moment. It could be during a charged conversation. It could be, doom scrolling on your phone, pausing and breaking away from, that trance. Tara Brach talks about the trance that we can get into, and we can get so stuck in, the fear, the worry, the what's happening, what's next, uncertainty, that it becomes almost a trance. And then, you might add in the internet, which has lots of people's thoughts and fears and worries and predictions. And that too can add to your own fear. So breaking that trance, coming back to the body, coming back to the breath, paying attention, it tells your body that you are safe. When you are able to take a mindful breath or two or five or 10, your body then starts saying like, oh, okay, we're safe. We're safe in this moment. And similarly, using the body scan, so scanning the body, tuning into physical sensations in order to bring your attention to the present and notice where tension might be arising. So you might have a thought, you might have a worry, and then okay, you've broken the trance, and then you're like, where do I feel this in my body? Because you can never be in a future sensation or a future breath, right? Or a past sensation or past breath. So these things bring you to the present moment. And when you're in the present moment, um, that is when you can have maybe feeling of ease, or perhaps creativity, or perhaps an awareness of what the next right best step is. And so the body can be, a great early warning sign. You might feel, sensations before you've actually put words to them. So if you notice like, oh, my stomach is flipping, or my heart's racing, or my brow is furrowed, then can you say, oh, okay, so this is what's happening in the body. How can I meet this? Because it's happening already. So to say like, I don't want this, no one wants that. No one wants tension in their body. No one wants to be riddled with fear and awake all night. Of course not. But really what you're doing by coming to the present moment is saying like, okay, there's awareness of maybe a feeling of safety in that moment. Because again, if you're able to pause and listen or watch this podcast, you're likely in a moment of safety. So we're learning how to expand on that, right? Because in moments of that are dire and challenging, if we've been practicing the tools of present moment awareness, of coming back to the breath, coming back to the body, then we can meet those challenges with a little bit more ease versus being kind of hijacked by that fight, flight, freeze experience when we get into that. The other thing, I know you all love when I talk about this, but non-judgmental observation. And this can go for your own experience, or it can go when you are with other people. And this can be a real big ask, especially when there's moments of divisiveness or differing opinions, really, really strongly differing opinions. What would it be like to bring non-judgmental observation or awareness so that you can acknowledge the emotions as they are, but without judging them, without putting labels on them, without making yourself bad and wrong? So that could just be, as we did in the practice. The mind wanders, bringing it back to the body. The mind wanders, bringing it back to the body. A lot of my students have said that they don't like mindfulness or meditation because they can't clear their mind. And they judge this fact that they can't clear their mind. And I'm here to say it is not about that. It is being non-judgmental about the things that are occurring already. So, and I am pausing because I am acknowledging in my mind and body how hard non-judgmental awareness can be, especially when we are talking about other people who have differing opinions. But what I come back to and what gives me solace in challenging times is the idea that most of us, I would say, no matter where you are on any belief or thought path, or whatever, that most of us want the same thing. I think it distills down to most of us want safety. Most of us want security. We want our health We want similar things because we share this gift of the human experience, which is why, the whole, if you listen to my opening or look on my website, I am drawn to these topics because they are what makes us human. It doesn't matter, um, how you are ultimately in the world. We share this human experience, where you are, your SES, your political leanings, your who you love, your where you live. We want similar things, and we want them for those that we love. And how we might go about getting them, and how we might go about trying to get them in our lives, the protection, the safety might look very different. And it can be really hard to say, like, oh, well, you want this, well, then you can't want the things that I want, because I want these things and this is how I want to get them. And they're saying, yeah, we might want the same things, but how you're going about it is, unimaginable to those people. So, and then we start othering, right? So it's like, I believe this, you believe that, then we other, and it creates such a divide and distance, and also a lot of fear. So, that being said, how can we bring non-judgmental observation, acknowledging emotions as they are without attaching labels or judgment? This is a real big ask. And of course, if you're very heightened, like emotionally, you might need to say to someone, like, I can't have this conversation right now, and remove yourself. But that's when you are able to do that, because you have been bringing awareness to your own situation, bringing awareness to your body, to your capability. What is your window of tolerance? How are you able to meet this moment? And if you can't, you can remove yourself. You can say, I can't have this conversation right now. But I do believe if we were to sit down with people from almost any walk of life, that we would get to the same place of what is desired. And that's what I love about people and their stories. That's why I may, do the type of research that I do. I do qualitative research. So that means that I talk to people and I hear about their experiences, and then I look for the commonality. And that commonality is there. And I just want people to know that, especially in times of the stormy times, it can be really hard to remember that even though someone has a wildly different way of trying to meet those needs, we are trying to meet similar needs. And that brings me to, when we're doing transitions, when, there's so many life transitions that people share. We're all born and we will all die. And those are major transitions. And for my friends who have had kids, whether they've had them, they've birthed them, they've adopted them, they've, fostered them, whatever your experience is, having children, while very much celebrated, can have its own sense of grief or transition of things the way that they used to be, right? I used to be able to take a nap when I wanted. I used to be able to, do what I wanted and not go to a t-ball game, whatever it is. I'm just saying that even with the joyful things, as we talked about with marriage, having children is another one that can be really hard to talk about, the grief that might be associated with that transition, from, being, not a parent to being a parent. And I want to normalize that we could say it's hard without negating the fact that we are overjoyed at having this person in our lives. Similarly, we might have grief over what's happening in the world, and we might want change, and we might want these things, and we feel like we can't get to them. So how can, in that moment of overwhelm, can you come back to the breath? Can you come back to the body? Can you not judge your own experience and say, like, this is hard? and many things are. So there's transitions that we choose to make. I am choosing to not continue the podcast on this platform. And there's a tenderness there. There's a like, oh, I've really loved doing this twice a month with the people, that are supporting me at Transformation Talk Radio. But I also really appreciate the people who have listened and responded. You might not know this, but before every episode, I sit and I take a few moments and I ask, that my words, that the topics are somehow touching at least one person in a positive way. And when I hear back from people that they heard something that I said and it meant something, that fills me with so much joy, because that's always been my intention. And so that doesn't mean that my intention of wanting to make a difference in people's lives has changed. It's just the modality is changing for right now. And so that is a choice, but there's also like some tenderness, and that is with all many, I would say, if not all transitions, right? And then there could be transitions that you were not signing up for, the death of a child or the death of someone you love, the loss of a job, the loss of anything that was out of your control. That transition into the reality of what is really hard. It is so hard. And that's why in this, this title of within the storm, finding the stillness. And someone said to me today about, if nothing else, if I don't have words, if I don't have understanding, if I don't have, kind of, yeah, if I don't have words and I don't have understanding, I have love. And can I ripple that out? Can I ripple that love out to the people that I care for? And in that way, say, I can't control all of this, but I can control how I'm responding to it. I can cling to that idea that I can be kind, that I can offer compassion to myself and others, that I can be non-judgmental. And again, might be a huge ask depending on the day that you're listening to this or the time in your life that you're listening to this. And so that might be a ways off. So then start with the self-compassion, and understanding that what you are saying or doing, your response to things is within your control. It might not feel like that, but it is. That's the stillness in the storm. And so I'd love to then now talk about how we might resist this. So, when we resist what is, that leads to suffering. And I think I've talked about this in the past, but it bears repeating. I love the parable of the second arrow. So, there are things that happen and it can be painful and it can be hard and it can be challenging. Um, and when we resist what's actually happening, it can increase the suffering. Thinking that it shouldn't be this way, wishing that it wasn't this way. And again, that is normal. I'm not trying to say that don't do that, but just becoming aware of like, okay, where am I resisting? And is this adding to my suffering? And am I able to take action in the way that I would want to take action, or offer kindness or offer peace when I'm in that deep suffering, especially during times of transition and resisting what is. And so I'm always inviting this idea into my own life, and this idea of curiosity. So how can I bring curiosity to a situation? Years ago, there was a woman, I'm blanking on her name. I think it was Dr. Dr. Joyce Brown. Anyways, she was on the East Coast, and I remember her saying this phrase, be curious, not furious. Be curious, not furious. So what is it like to invite a sense of curiosity to a situation? Does that give a little bit more space, to what's actually happening? Um, going back to, again, now cultivating self-compassion. So when fears and resistance do arise, um, like scroll back up to non-judgment. Don't judge the fact that you're resisting. Don't judge the fact that you're experiencing fear, but what can you do in that moment to support yourself? Again, my favorite go-to is the hands to heart center or hands on the belly, holding my own hands. There's something about, touch. I also will use essential oils. This one is called I Am Connected, which I put on today because creating connection with Dr. T. I thought that felt appropriate. But what scent does is, actually brings you back to the present moment as well. So if you feel yourself spinning out, is there something that you can hold on to, whether it's yourself, a rock? I don't remember the name of this one, but someone said that it was helpful if you were experiencing strong emotions. And so, using the tools to bring you back to the present moment. Um, you know, I think often we might want to kind of skip to the good part or, reframe in a way. Reframing is really an important part of change and transition, but notice if you're trying to do it too fast, if you're trying to like get that silver lining out before you've actually experienced grief or, like allowed yourself to have those human things. Because again, I'm not saying don't have them. I am saying when you are having them, what tools can you use to support yourself? And also remembering that window of tolerance. So remembering that, you know, you might need to take these things in segments, right? So if the phone and information on the internet or things like that are, or the news are really heightened, maybe you need to, turn them off for a day, for a moment, and do some things to gather yourself back to yourself so that you can then say, okay, what is happening? How can I meet what's happening with curiosity and ease? And then, this idea of, curiosity, it actually is opening us to growth, right? And so the path might feel uncertain, but maybe you can be curious about what's the next right step? What's the next right step? And, kind of just baby step your way into a situation. I'm going to pause here in a moment and then begin our second meditation. Okay, second meditation, embracing change with compassion. Again, finding a position that feels supportive where you can be alert yet at ease, making any adjustments to your posture so that you can really settle in for this moment. Noticing the breath. You might notice where you feel the breath most easily in the body. Maybe it's at the tip of the nose or in the nostrils. As you breathe in, you might notice the air is slightly cooler than on the exhale. The air on the exhale being slightly warmed by the body. Or maybe you notice the breath at the back of the throat, this airway passage, bringing air into the lungs, into the body. Or perhaps you notice the breath at the chest, the rise on the inhale, the fall on the exhale, rising and falling. The breath is with us 24 hours a day. And it is this moment of pausing and getting curious. Where do I feel the breath most easily in my body? You may feel the breath most easily in the belly, expanding on the inhale, contracting on the exhale. Just taking a few moments now to pay attention to the breath, the body breathing, and where you feel it most easily at the nose, the throat, the chest, the belly. Not trying to force anything or make anything happen, just simply noticing the body breathing. And when the mind wanders, which is what the mind does, simply bringing the attention back to the body, breathing, breathing in, breathing out. And don't scold yourself if the mind is busy. That's okay. Just gently, non judgmentally invite the attention back to the body breathing. And while you continue breathing, I'd like to read a quote from Pema Chodron. So, continuing with the breath, Pema writes, "Only when we know our own darkness, only when we know our own darkness well, can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. We can let the circumstances of our lives harden us so that we become increasingly resentful and afraid. Or we can let them soften us and make us kinder and more open to what scares us. We always have this choice." I'm going to read that again. Only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. We can let the circumstances of our lives harden us so that we become increasingly resentful and afraid. Or we can let them soften us and make us kinder and more open to what scares us. We always have this choice. Continuing to follow the path of the breath, breathing in, breathing out, allowing yourself to arrive and settle in this moment as it is. And as thoughts and feelings arise, inviting compassion for the experience. Maybe even saying to yourself, "Oh, honey, this is hard. This is really hard right now." You might even acknowledge, "I don't know what to do in this moment." But then invite this idea of staying open and curious, acknowledging shared humanity, seeing if you can invite compassion for the people that surround us, the people in our communities, in our states, countries, and in the world, that they too would like to be safe. They too would like happiness. They too would want wellness in body and mind. This idea of life happening, and can we open to the tenderness and vulnerability of compassion for ourselves and others? Can we stay open with curiosity and love? Is it possible to offer these to our own experience again and again? We are human beings having a human experience, and it is not easy. But here we are, and we're together. And when we can maybe find that stillness in the storm, find that connection to our shared humanity, it might be possible to ripple out kindness, to, from where we are, ripple out compassion and care for all of us. May we be safe. May we be happy. May we be well in body and mind. May we live with ease. Inviting some movement to the body, wiggling the fingers and toes, maybe taking a stretch and opening the eyes if they've been closed. Thank you for sharing that moment with me. I hope it was supportive for you as well. So, some practical ways to integrate mindfulness into daily routines. This can be helpful all of the time. Again, when we set practices in place, it helps kind of, bolster us in the storm. Um, if we have storm shutters, we shut them before the storm if we know the storm's coming. And these tools and techniques, yes, are definitely helpful during everyday transitions, or during moments of challenges. But when we do practice them, when we do bring them into kind of our own habits, I guess, they can be very useful in the stormy times. So, a morning check-in, taking a moment of mindfulness to set intentions for the day, knowing that we can set intentions and things can change and go off course. So that's where, holding things lightly, this idea of letting be, like I can set a goal, I can set intentions, and, the day is going to unfold how the day unfolds. And so what can I do to bring mindfulness into that, right? So checking in, what do you intend for the day, and seeing if during those challenges during the day, if you can touch back into those intentions, if the intention was to be kind and curious, what can you do to remind yourself throughout the day, especially in moments maybe of challenging conversations or interactions. I also love the idea of pausing before decisions. Brene Brown, she talks beautifully about this, but she has one of those, like a spinner ring. And she says that when people ask her, to do something, she'll spin the ring 3 different times. So that's her way of pausing before making a decision, because we can get like kind of caught up, right? It can be like, oh, I need to make this decision now. I need to do this. But, getting in the habit of pausing to assess your emotions, to assess your capacity, to assess your willingness before responding or deciding. And so it can be just helpful, maybe someone, if you don't have a spinner ring, which I haven't gotten yet, but that is on my list to get, because I love that idea as a practice. That is neither here nor there. But pausing, so taking a mindful pause before you respond or decide. And so that could be even in an interaction, going back to what I said earlier, if you don't have the capacity, or you feel, kind of like your window of tolerance for, some challenging discussion, you can say, I don't want to have this conversation right now. So take a pause, check in with the body. Are you feeling that tension or tightness? And how can you meet that? I also really do like a gratitude practice. Again, as long as it is like an organic practice. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean like forcing things, because sometimes things will be really hard. And then you might have those, helpful, not so helpful people saying, well, at least you have this, at least you have this. And that's kind of this icky gratitude, like, okay, well, yes, I do have all of those things. And yes, ultimately, I am grateful. But in this moment, I'm scared or I'm afraid or I'm upset. So that's what I mean about not forcing gratitude or not having it used as a stick. Because sometimes we might feel afraid or worried and we want to offer ourselves compassion, but then we're like, yeah, but so and so has it worse, or this other, situation is so much worse. And we are all having experiences, and that doesn't mean that there's a hierarchy of experiences that we should be applying. Because if something is difficult or a transition is hard, you can offer yourself compassion, and it's okay that someone else has it, worse than you, because that's their experience. And you're not negating that, right? Because these are things when people are having hard things, and especially, and I fully recognize and acknowledge the place of privilege where I'm talking about this from. Okay, so that is true. So, but in that gratitude practice, if you find it kind of negating, like, oh, I can't feel this way because I have all these other things, um, then you're really diminishing your own experience, and you might even be blocking it. You might not be able to move through things if you're like, oh, I don't have a right to feel these things because someone else has it worse. Um, so mindfulness in the small moments. So that's taking time in kind of moments, then it helps create or build resilience in big ones. And so, my mindfulness practice, doesn't take away challenges. And I know I've talked about this before, but I, if you haven't heard the story, I had a mindfulness practice for years, and when my husband got in, a really scary accident and he came real close to dying, um, in those moments, I was able to lean on the practices that I had to bring myself back to the present moment, to bring myself, into like a moment of gratitude. He was in his hospital bed, but I was next to him, and I was able to breathe and come back to the present moment. And in that moment, I was able to open to, not that I was happy he had the accident, but I was really thankful and grateful that we had health insurance, that we had medical attention so that he was able to live through that accident. And so that's when we come and we use these tools, right? So we practice so that we can meet our lives with more ease. So here we are. We're coming towards the end of episode 28, and I am so thankful for your support and encouragement during this time. And it is important to find moments of stillness in life storms. And, in times of transition, allow yourself to maybe lean in or get a little close to the discomfort of a transition moment, or get curious about the emotions, or, you know, just, I don't know, take care of yourselves in some way. So finding that stillness, coming into the body, coming into the breath, into the present moment, that is the stillness in life storms. And so, beyond this episode, beyond the two practices that we did, I would love for you to continue practicing these things. Hand to heart center, finding your feet, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, doing those soft belly breathing exercises so that you can meet life's difficulties with a little bit more ease. And again, I am so grateful for all of you. And, I would love it if you'd share this episode or your experiences with mindfulness during transitions. You can still find me. I'm not going anywhere. I just won't be doing this actively twice a month. So the episodes will still continue on. So if you are just finding us now, go back and have a listen to the other 27 episodes. I would love that. And share those as well. My website, you can find me either through Theresa B Skaar.com. So that's my name, Theresa, B as in boy, Skaar.com, or the kind of shortened version of this show, ccwithdrt.com. That's CCWITH, Dr. DRT.com. And on my website, you will be able to find links to my socials. I have started, doing TikToks, and I post on Instagram and LinkedIn most frequently. So I would love if you would find me and follow me, and we can connect out in the social world that way. You can also find links to connect with me through my website, either through joining my newsletter, or setting up a, what do I call that? Like a discovery call with me. So I will continue my professional speaking. I will continue doing workshops and creating content. And I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for this opportunity and for all of the support in creating connection with Dr. T. And I love to create connection. So please continue to connect with me, Dr. T. And that would be it for, I guess that's a wrap. Is that what they say? Thank you for listening to Creating Connection with me, Dr. T. You can join me by tuning in on the first and third Wednesdays every month at 10 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com, where we will navigate being human together. Being human means that we all have a body, and we will all experience loss, grief, and aging if we're lucky. Let's join together on this journey of exploration, support, and mutual learning. I love bringing people together, and on Creating Connection, we are a conversation away from understanding another person and, quite frankly, ourselves. For more information, visit ccwithdrt.com.